All right, I'd like to call our meeting to order. Roll call, all members of the council are present. We will bypass the land acknowledgement that was done at the previous meeting. Disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda is presented to you this evening. Hearing none. Delegations, we have with us our Director of Financial Services and our Chief Financial Officer read the procurement policy.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So this evening I'll be presenting the next step of our council workshops, which is on procurement. So by definition, procurement or purchasing is the process for budgeting funds and acquiring goods and services, with the main purpose and importance being to achieve the best value for the corporation. So in that process, there are 3 stages: planning and scheduling programs, activities, and tasks to meet objectives. So this entails what is it that we need. Sometimes this can be clearly defined, and sometimes an exact solution is known, or sometimes we're looking for a creative solution. When do we need it? What's our budget? Tendering stage includes determining the method of procurement. So the method is driven primarily by 2 factors, one being price, the other being how well defined the solution or need is. Building the bid documents. So this can be quite detailed and lengthy. So it could be hundreds of pages long, including draft designs, or it can be more of a broad description of a problem. Posting our tender, this can be open to the public in most cases. It can also be by direct approach to suppliers. Public tendering is an area that has changed dramatically over the past 5 years or so. So where in the past we would have considered several different posting avenues, such as newspapers, our town website, professional associations. Now we use electronic tendering exclusively, which is a digital platform that extends our reach and allows for process efficiencies. Evaluating submissions. So this includes ensuring submissions are complete to spec, costing, which can be complex if considering life cycle costs, and it may include scoring matrices to evaluate creative solutions. Awarding involves notification to the successful bidder, requesting required documents such as certificates of insurance, WSIB clearances, and informing those proponents who were not successful. And contract execution. So this may require authorization by the mayor and clerk, and can lengthen the process where a council report may be required. There's a contract exchange report between parties and signatures. And finally is contract administration. So after getting through those first 2 stages, you get to the final stage and most of the work you feel is done, but actually this is arguably the most important stage. And this includes the work required to ensure that your preferred solution is actually realized. So delivered as per spec, on time, on budget, and with no unintended side effects. So it's a lengthy process, and one where time and effort invested upfront can pay dividends towards the end of the process. There's a great amount of effort and coordination on the part of departments, along with purchasing staff and our clerk's department. So those were the procurement fundamentals, and those apply to all industries. But when we talk about public procurement, there's an added challenge, and that we must comply with laws, acts, and regulations that are imposed upon us. So municipalities are required to have a policy that ensures that procurement practices will comply with laws, regulations, and trade agreements. So we've listed the Canada Free Trade Agreement here as an example, and the Canadian-Europe Trade Agreement. Others, there are up to another 15 or so that apply to municipalities. So they are generally quite similar to the Canada Free Trade Agreement with regard to the impact to municipalities. Internally, per our bylaw and policy, we require that a council approved budget exists prior to any procurement as well. So council is familiar, of course, with our budget process, which takes months. You can appreciate, of course, the amount of advanced planning necessary to procure any one item. Generally, the framework imposed by statutes and policies contains 3 essential elements. Those are: procurement is to be accomplished using a competitive bidding process. Selection is based on lowest price or best value. Bidders must be treated equally and fairly. So these elements have been established through case law dating back to 1981 and trade agreements, which first began in the 1980s, which led to most notably the North American Free Trade Agreement in 1994 and the Agreement on Internal Trade in 1995, which was the predecessor to the CFTA in 2017. So unsuccessful bidders can bring an action in private law. If they are successful in proving their claim, courts will often award the supplier a monetary award equivalent to the profit it would have made on the contract. Non-monetary damages can be significant as well, including public criticism, negative media attention, and providing access to information. So when considering the amount of money expended on goods and services and time invested in procurement, along with compliance with procurement law and associated risks, the importance of procurement process is evident. A sound, well-functioning procurement process will provide for safeguarding of public funds. So procurement staff are tasked with the policing of public spending, maintaining integrity in the process. Efficiency and effectiveness. So municipal programs and services rely on goods and services of high quality, fairly priced, and timely delivery. Public confidence will exist when procurement is carried out in an ethical and prudent manner. Supplier confidence will exist if there is open, fair, and transparent competition. Suppliers will not bother to compete if they distrust the process. And public policy and law, so public bodies are required as a matter of both public policy and law to ensure that goods and services are obtained by fair and open competition. So our procurement process in Tecumseh is governed by our bylaw 2021-60 as amended by 2021-103. And that also includes our accompanying policy number 17. The purpose of our bylaw and policy is to ensure that goods and services are acquired through a compliant, open, fair, and transparent process, that responsibilities of town staff are identified and defined throughout each stage of the procurement process, and that procurement processes are managed consistently. So for the next few slides, I've selected a few elements of our bylaw and policy to highlight. So our bylaw has a guiding principle, and that procurement decisions will be made using a competitive process that is open, fair, and transparent, and in accordance with applicable regulatory trade agreements. Within our bylaw, there are 10 general provisions. So I'll speak to 4 of those in this presentation. First is that department directors shall act for the town for the purchase of all goods and services in accordance with this bylaw and policy. No purchase of goods or services shall be authorized unless it is in compliance with the bylaw and policy, and that includes a council-approved budget. Elected officials shall not approve or acquire any goods or service. And fourth, purchase of all goods and services shall be authorized in accordance with the provisions of Schedule A with limited exceptions. So I've got an excerpt of Schedule A here shown for your reference. So procurement process and level of approval authority are primarily driven by dollar value of procurement. Schedule A also includes approval authority matrices for non-regular procurement. So for example, single, sole sourcing, direct negotiation approval authority, and also approval authority for tenders with irregular results. The bylaw also includes Schedule B. So that's goods and services that are not subject to this bylaw. So some examples include training and education, employer general expenses such as payroll deductions, insurance premiums, and professional and special services such as legal services, banking services, utilities, and with respect to bylaw 2021-103, consultant services that are less than $100,000. Part 3 of the bylaw identifies and defines roles and responsibilities, including department directors who have the responsibility for all procurement activities within their respective departments and are accountable to achieving best value while following the procurement principles. And they have the authority to purchase items as outlined in Schedule A. Purchasing officer provides procurement advice and services to departments, monitors compliance with bylaw and policy, administers the public tender process, and provides education and training sessions. And the purchasing coordinator has approval authority in certain circumstances and is authorized to make and promulgate administrative policies, procedures, and directions. So by now, of course, you've heard reference to fair, open, transparent several times in this presentation, and that will encourage competition. Competition is sought by all buying entities, and it is fundamental to achieving best value. The town's bylaw and policy require that any procurement greater than 50,000 follow an open competitive process. There are two types of competitive procurement: an invitation for bids or a request for proposal. So invitation for bids, this is procurement based on price alone, subject to proponents meeting product service specifications. And those can be referred to as RFQs, RFTs commonly. A request for proposal, this is a procurement based on a combination of factors such as quality, past experience of vendor, creativity, etc., in addition to price. There are instances where non-competitive procurement can occur, such as in a case where there are no compliant bids through a public offering. So in that instance, we can either retender or go direct to a supplier for a solution. Emergencies, competition precluded due to patent rights, where there is only one source of supply, confidentiality or security matters, or purchases less than $10,000. In any of the above events, approval authority rests with council where purchase cost is greater than $100,000. Below $100,000, but greater than $10,000, approval authority lies with the department director, purchasing coordinator, and CAO. Cooperative purchasing is the acquisition of goods or services by two or more agencies acting together. This is included within our policy, provided that the cooperative's procurement process is in compliance with trade agreements and is consistent with our bylaw and policy. Tecumseh currently participates in 4 buying groups, including Canoe, Kinetic, OECM, and OPBA. Member agencies can realize savings by combining individual requirements and seeking bids for larger volumes. And lastly, we end with electronic tendering. So this is relatively new and is the process of using online procurement platforms to automatically solicit bids and evaluate suppliers. So we use this exclusively now. We use a platform called Bids and Tenders, as do our neighbors in the county. There are many advantages, including procurement opportunities can be posted easily and inexpensively. Documents can be distributed quickly. Document management costs are reduced significantly. Procurement activities are highly visible. Value-added services for suppliers such as a bid award notification exist, and new vendors are often attracted to electronic tendering sites. Thank you. And if there are any questions, I could entertain those now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kitsos. Any questions or comments on the presentation? Great job. Great job. All right. Then a motion to accept the report as presented. Councilor Jobin, Councilor Houston. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you very much. All right, next delegation, Mr. Sean Further, Director of Technology and Client Services, and Amanda Cercelli, Manager of Customer Service. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. So we're before you this evening to do similar to the other departments, a refresher or an introduction to customer service in this case. As council will recall, we did have an org review in 2021 that really put a focus on customer service across the organization, including a dedicated customer service division, which we're forming to date. Prior to the org review, there were 2 policies on the books with respect to customer service. One policy 97 for customer service, and policy 98 with respect to a complaint policy. So that's currently on the books now. We are reviewing them both, but in the meantime, tonight Amanda will speak to both of those policies. In addition to some updates to some items we brought before council last fall with respect to the customer service strategy, the phone system, and complaint processing, et cetera. So this evening we have, as the mayor said, Amanda's with us, and it's her first formal meeting as part of Team Tecumseh. She joined us 5 or 6 weeks ago, and at that time, I did mention we had this a date with council on March 28th to prepare for, so she hit the ground running, and now I'll turn it over to her to present council.
Thank you. And through your worship, thank you for the opportunity to present on customer service this evening. For the purpose of this presentation, we're going to cover off 3 specific areas of the conversation, highlighting the importance of the customer service policy. To Sean's point, this policy was implemented in 2019 prior to the reorg and is currently under review as part of the customer service team. Additionally, looking to share current service delivery metrics, and finally providing an update regarding the customer service strategy. So looking specifically at the current customer service policy itself, the purpose of the policy is to provide a high-level expectation in communicating with citizens and customers, both internally and externally, through a transparent and accountable approach. Employees will be empowered to provide clear, concise, and accurate information and deliver services in a professional, timely, and helpful manner. And just here to highlight the current channels of service that are available for customers and residents to access. There's in-person services, telephone, email, online, direct mail, and through social media channels as well. So within section 4 of the customer service policy, just looking to highlight some specifics within this section. Looking at anonymous complaints with no assessment to risk life or safety, these will not be followed up with a response. Next, looking at employees. Employees are not expected to tolerate abusive behavior, specifically negative abusive interactions or complex situations that have a potential to influence the reputation of the corporation should be directed to a manager or director. Best practices are in place on how to handle abusive behavior, and there is continuous education for staff on use of the duress buttons, phone call protocols, de-escalation techniques, and setting effective limits of having these challenging conversations. And training will be an ongoing part of the customer service team. For inquiries requiring the attention of a department, these are generated through CityWorks by means of service requests. So what these service requests do is gather information regarding the nature of the inquiry or complaint. Customers should have a clear understanding of the process and exactly who is handling their inquiry. We did recently implement an automated or reintroduce an automated response to clients and customers confirming receipt of the service request that has been put in. And there is going to be focused attention on the life cycle of inquiries and complaints going forward, specifically to this point to establish consistency with triage and points of contact within the service request system, notifying customers of receipt and closure of the service requests. And we are currently implementing a review process for all departments for any service requests that are open beyond 30 days and have a better understanding of department specific requirements if service requests need to go beyond 30 days. So an example of this would be for trees. Those requests are closed off twice a year, so it would not be expected that those requests would be reviewed on a monthly basis, but ensure that they are closed off twice a year, as is the current approach for those. So this next slide is just to illustrate what the definition of the CityWorks system is. It is the software used by the corporation to record customer service requests and complaints and automatically code, route these complaints to the appropriate and responsible staff member. And importantly, it measures the progress by establishing and monitoring the results. So this next slide just provides an example of what you would see on the back end of the CityWorks system and what an intake for a service request might look like. As you can see on the left-hand side, it is broken out into departments. So it's we can drill down easily into the specific request specific to an area. And also you can see here, nothing's populated, but that's where the details would go in if a service request is generated. And there is both external facing information that gets inputted into the system as well as internal information in terms of the status updates that are entered by employees. This next slide hopefully provides a simplified version of what the workflow looks like in CityWorks, from the intake to reviewing the metrics that I previously spoke to. So the intake for a service request can be done through phone, email, in person, or online. And from there, the information gets put into the system. And as I mentioned, both citizen-facing comments and internal information that's generated as part of the service request. From there, the service requests are assigned to staff. And I've highlighted this important point that at this point, an automated confirmation email is sent to the citizen to confirm that the request has been received. From there, it's dispatched to the appropriate employee. And from then, it's kind of an internal facing process where the status updates are entered, or if it needs to be dispatched to another employee. The status updates could be open, in progress, completed, or closed. And when a service request is closed, you'll note there that the client and customer will get an updated email notifying them that the service request has been closed. As I mentioned, these 30-day thresholds are going to be monitored on a regular basis in terms of ensuring that the service requests are either closed at the 30-day mark, or if there is communication that needs to happen with the customer beyond the 30-day mark to provide them a status update of where the service request is at. And then looking to really take a look at trends and audits as part of as part of CityWorks going forward as well, to ensure that we're using that information for evidence-based decisions. So here, looking at the current state and just highlighting a few key aspects of that. So right now, there's both informal and formal channels that exist for how service requests are generated. And this could be via text, phone calls, emails, or informal in-person conversations that usually happen on a one-on-one basis with individuals. And this, unfortunately, creates some inconsistency for communication channels, and eventually, if it's not put in the workflow system, it's outside of the workflow system, so it doesn't even get logged as a service request. So where we're hoping to go in the future state is formalize the service requests and complaint channels. And we have recently enabled, as of today, the report and issue function of the Town of Tecumseh website that directly interfaces with CityWorks. So what this means is if a resident goes online to populate the form that's on the website, that will automatically go into CityWorks and be assigned to the appropriate department, unless it needs to be triaged once it gets to that initial person, and it can be redispatched to the appropriate employee internally. So for members of council, your options with this new feature is to either direct clients to the website or direct customers to the website so that they can report an issue themselves through the portal, or you are welcome to complete it on the website on their behalf, so it gets entered into the CityWorks system as well. So we're hoping this video is going to work. It just very quickly shows you, if there is a play button, how to navigate to submit the service request. So you go to the Submit Online button and it will populate a field to enter the information. So there is a drop down where you would select the appropriate department. And from there, once completed, that will go into the workflow in the CityWorks system and be assigned to the right department. So getting back to the policy itself. So employees will ensure responses are provided in a professional manner, and they're encouraged where feasible and reasonable to look at ways to meet or exceed expectations of customers and service delivery. When service gaps are observed, they should be communicated to the appropriate department, manager, or director. And there is a relationship between the expected results and service level. And for this, I wanted to point out that there might be situations where the end result may not always be what the customer came in for or intends to receive as part of the transaction, but it still can be a positive experience. And that is really what we're striving for as well. In terms of plan for measurement, we're looking at opportunities to have real-time transactional level measurement in addition to the ad hoc and historical surveys that are completed. So by this, I mean, for example, within signature blocks, if there is a link to complete a survey immediately after a point, of service delivery or in the lobby right after someone receives service, if there is the opportunity to collect information at that point, instead of it being historical, it's real time and in the moment as they're receiving the service. So the next few sections speak to response times for the different service delivery channels, and the first one being in-person and telephone communication. So just from a level of awareness, telephone calls are expected to be responded to within 1 business day. If the information requested is unknown, a callback is required to identify the department and the inquiry that it was directed to. Personal voicemail should be updated and include relevant information, requests to receive detailed information, and an alternate contact should that employee be out of the office. All customers should also have a clear understanding of who is handling their inquiry. And when looking to transfer calls, it's to inform the caller of the department and the employee that the call is being forwarded to, and that employees will strive to correctly transfer calls on the first attempt. And this is something that we're looking to take a look at in terms of a quick training refresher to ensure everyone's aware of how to transfer calls and the warm transfers of ensuring someone's on the other line before the customer is fully transferred off to the other person. And finally, communicate with customers using plain language and speaking clearly. Section 6 of the policy and section 7 speak to email and formal written correspondence, and we have collapsed the two primarily because formal written correspondence is not as highly used as email these days. So email should be responded to within 3 business days according to the policy. And specifically, if a formal decision of council is required, the employee will advise the customer and provide a date of the next council meeting. And after that council meeting, an official response is provided within 5 business days of the council decision. Looking at out of office automatic replies, it should be activated when the employee is out of the office for more than 1 business day. And within that message, an alternate contact should be provided. For written correspondence specifically, it should be responded to within 5 business days, according to the policy. Next, looking at website and social media. So within the social media realm, messages should be responded to within 1 business day, recognizing that posted on our social media outlets are the normal business hours of 8:30 to 4:30. And on the weekends, there is an automatic reply on Facebook specifically that indicates that we are out of the office and they can expect a response the first business day after the weekend. Responses are expected to be friendly, professional, and informative to strengthen community engagement. And should additional information be required, the employee will inform the customer that a response will be provided once the information is known. Speaking specifically to online forms and applications, it notes in the policy that responses within 2 business days, confirming the receipt of the application, are expected. So next, we're going to move into some of the current service delivery metrics that are available. And this first slide shows since 2019 by year, the number of service requests that have been entered into the CityWorks system. So as you can see, a total of 4,750 service requests and inquiries since May 7th, 2019 have been entered. And the next slide shows a similar time frame by department and the proportion of each of the service requests that have been received by department. So as you'll note, bylaw, roads and parks were the top areas that service requests were entered in CityWorks for. And the other category I just wanted to note includes waste, clerks, fire, the CAO, mayor's office, facility, and drains. The next slide drills down a little bit further into 2022 statistics specifically. You'll note a shift in roads having a greater proportion of requests in comparison to the time frame between 2019 and 2022, where bylaw had the greater overall percentage of requests, and parks remained 3rd overall, followed by sewer, traffic, and the other category that remained relatively unchanged proportionally. So for the 3rd portion of the presentation today, I wanted to provide a high-level refresher regarding some of the key customer service objectives and areas of priority going forward. So first, the goal is for seamless omni-channel access to information and services within the town of Tecumseh. Recognizing that channel preference is shifting to online, still wanting to afford seamlessness between the channels and the options for residents to choose between the channels that they wish to seek service delivery from. Key areas of priority continue to include fostering a customer service culture, optimizing business processes, and effective use of technology, which includes the phone system, which is a great segue into our next slide. So as you can recall, in September of 2022, it was approved to move to this option that's in front of you for the phone systems and the option for a hybrid live answer model, with the goal to select from a list of departments and services and also have the option to speak directly with a customer service representative. So we are currently working on implementing a queue phone approach in order to provide the live answer option from the main phone menu options. And the next slide will illustrate that for you. So this responds to feedback that was provided during interviews as part of the org review and meets the needs that were identified as part of that review as well. It also aligns with recommendations from various other strategies, builds capacity for cross-training, and allows room for growth and continuous improvement. So what this visual illustrates is that from the main phone line, what the goal will be is to still have the options to select by department, but there will be the option to select 0, which will be a phone queue that will have someone answering the phone live, if that's the selection that the customer wishes to select. And from there, their options will be to either hopefully have a knowledge base available to triage and resolve the issue, or if that's not the case, to connect and triage to the correct employee who can handle the inquiry or any follow-up that needs to happen. So looking at next steps and focusing kind of on 3 core areas, looking at a responsive and consistent customer service approach, implementing the hybrid phone system that I just spoke to, really embracing a continuous improvement model, looking at the value add and opportunity to find efficiencies and really focus on that customer experience. And as I just briefly mentioned in the last slide, an example of this is building a knowledge base, which I believe has started for our common questions and inquiries that are received from residents so that frontline team members can respond and triage those calls, hopefully at the first tier, and then they don't have to go into any further queue in any other department, and it can be resolved at that point. Additionally, I've had the opportunity over the last few weeks to attend some workshops through the Municipal Service Delivery Organization, one being part of the customer service professional modules and also designing customer service standards. And I'll be looking to incorporate these learnings in the planning and system design for customer service going forward as well. The next area is looking at key performance indicators, which I also mentioned as part of the metrics and information that we can extract from the CityWorks program, and really using this to make evidence-based decisions for council and administration, along with, again, fostering that in continuous improvement philosophy and customer service culture in the town. And finally, looking at an opportunity to really monitor and review service requests and within that 30-day threshold that's currently within the policy, and ensure that on a regular basis, the 30-day threshold is something that's reported out on each department and having some information available from those reports. And happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Amanda and Sean, for bringing this forward. Just a couple questions in terms of, the process, so I understand it well. So the gatekeeper of this will be the manager, with yourself, Amanda, overseen by Sean, in terms of, how that annual report that you showed all that data.
Mhm.
Is that something that you're going to be tracking on a quarterly basis? So, if you notice certain things are not being responded to, it's your gatekeeper that you'll be overseeing that component. And then as a council, would we be able to be privy to those reports versus an annual versus a quarterly? Like the little pie graphs that you showed, that's great information. January to April, it'd be interesting to see how things change over the year. But if we could get those reports provided, that'd be nice. The other question was come back to me. I had it in my mind, but it just lost track.
Councilor Tonio. Oh, you want to answer the questions? Yeah, I'm going to
Yes,
give you
there-
about 10 of them there and it just flood your mind.
Yes, through your worship, I can answer the question about the monitoring because there that 30-day threshold right now. I intend to review them on a monthly basis. And we did discuss bringing a report back on an annual basis, but should there be a need for that more often, we can certainly look at that.
And I just remembered, so in terms of, council, mayor, that one on page 6, it shows that that's where it gets recorded. If we receive a call or member of council, do we send that to the mayor's office like Monique or Marge, or do we direct the resident, like in terms of as a council, if we get a complaint, where do I actually input it into City Works, or what are you recommending the best practice so that, kind of we're on the same page?
Yes, so through your worship, the options are you can certainly do it on behalf of the resident or direct them to the website to complete it themselves. If there are accessibility issues or there's some challenges in doing that, obviously they can contact me.
Okay, I think that kind of helps because in the past, I send an email to Mr. Hillman and then I send one to Mr. Kitsko and it's all over the place. And, sometimes Mark sees, sometimes we don't, she doesn't know. So this kind of actually, that's why I say you're the gatekeeper and it's really going to help. So thank you so much. This is, very much needed and long overdue. So good job.
Councilor Tonio.
Thank you. And to you, Mr. Mayor, good job, first of all. Very good report. I'm happy I see for our citizens to get better customer service and get more responses from us and administration. Segue from Deputy Mayor's comment there. So if I input it, am I the complainant or are they the complainant, or and then second question, do I need their permission to put it on there?
Yeah, so if you have their details and they request you to put it on their behalf, then you would input their information
Okay.
and the specifics regarding the complaint that's going in.
So the dialogue with myself should be, okay, if you don't want to put it in, do you mind if I put it in, you give me the information, and it'll be put in as a system, as a complaint in their name, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead. Councilor Higgins then.
Thank you very much. This is a great report, and it's really great to see the kind of improvements and that we're basing this one on some feedback, and then we're looking at feedback going forward. I'm interested in the report and issue piece as it aligns to some of the policy, specifically in 4.0, like 4.1 and 4.2, about protecting our employees as well from abusive behavior and things like that. How are those triaged in the case of, say, there wouldn't be able to be put an anonymous complaint in, so that at least solves that issue. But how are we monitoring that abusive behavior to come in on what can be seen as not a person to person, but computer to computer sort of entry? Are we monitoring that at all of what comes in on that report and issue platform?
Yes, through your worship, if there was anything that came through the other option on that drop down, so if there was a concern that you had about a complaint and the nature of how it came in, if you selected the other option, that would come directly to me. Additionally, anything that would be a complaint against an employee would not go to anybody else but myself. I'm not sure if that fully answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I'm wary of when we get behind a keyboard, we sometimes will say things that we wouldn't normally say on the phone. And I just want I want to make sure that we're providing our frontline staff with some distance between what could be seen as something when they log into their computer on Monday morning and see something that's either about them or about somebody that they work with, or something like that, that we're providing them some relief from that, or that there's some protection against that for them.
Yes, and I would be the only one receiving those. Yeah.
Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, again, to the comments that other members of council made, it's a great report. I look forward to seeing it work its way through and analyzing or seeing the data of how things have improved. The one question I have, and I think it's really important how we're kind of circling back so that when somebody does input or a request, that they do get an email that says, you know, we have it. But just for a little clarity, if they do put it in online, they'll receive the acknowledgement that, you know, the system has, you know, received that request. At what other points would they receive? Will they receive closure of the issue? And I'm assuming, you know, depending on the nature of the issue, they'll get a phone call or an email from a town staff member. But just what are the points back to the individual in between submission and closure? What are the type of automatic information is sent, just so I have a better understanding of the entire process?
For sure, through your worship. So there will be different checkpoints. If the service request is closed off within 30 days, they'll receive notification within 30 days that it has been closed off. If it goes beyond 30 days, the expectation is that somebody from the department that it's assigned to will contact the customer to provide an update on where their service request is at.
Thank you. And I think that that's important for the resident to know, you know, if they spoke to somebody, you know, was it completed? Was it not completed? If they get the email that your case is closed and they don't think it's closed, then, you know, at least they can follow back up on that. So I think it's important that we just, the complainant or the resident is on the same level, and they've got the expectations that, you know, the town does. And I think that's important. So I wish you the best of luck with implementing the entire strategy.
Thank you.
I think the important piece, usually a couple of things when I call it becomes full circle. Complaint comes in, goes into the process, it's addressed, and then it goes back out to the resident. Resident's not happy, so the cycle starts again, usually through the mayor's office and so forth. So the collection as well. I think it's important that at least through Monique and through the office and that is as things are checked off, they're there so that myself or members of council and that are not you know, taken by surprise in terms of somebody said, you know, because I always say there's two sides to the story, but to have access to that information, and usually like for us it's not a 9-to-5 job, it's a 24/7 and access to that information is critical, and because the majority of it does come through the mayor's office as well, and as others here will say, they'll direct it back to you. But I like the mechanism in place is that there's concrete steps to follow, and the biggest piece is to have continuity for certainly for the residents. And then there's nothing worse than you hear someone saying, you know, this is about the 4th time I've called over the last 2 months and nothing's been done and so forth. So we certainly now I think you've got a mechanism in place to kind of march it along, but getting some of that, you know, that information that get back to us somehow. But great report and pretty excited in fact that again, I mean, most of us around the horseshoe, you know, pride ourselves on customer service, and because at the end of the day, we're the employees around this horseshoe to the employer, which is the residents out in the street. Yep. So let's need a resolution on the report as presented. Adopted. Councilor Tonio moves. Councilor Houston support. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you very much. Great report. No communications. Report's been adopted. Adjournment's in order. Councilor Higginson and Councilor Dorner. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you very much. This meeting is now adjourned.